Things you own end up owning you.
What's going on, cutie pies? Welcome back to the show. It's been a while. Hope everybody's doing well out there. My guest today is Pedro DoAmaral. Pedro is a biomedical and biotech student who has an awesome and very informative Instagram page, which I'll link. He's a very intelligent guy, and he knows his science, but he's also a dude that understands the necessity of being practical. We talk about everything from the calories in to calories out model, to the great vitamin D debate, to mold testing, and his thoughts on EMF mitigation, and all sorts of other stuff. I had a great time talking to Pedro, and I hope you enjoyed the show. So yeah, brother, thanks for coming on to the show.
No problem. Pleasure to be here.
I really appreciate it. Listen, I was going through some of the podcasts that you've been on, which are great, and I was kind of, just listening to some, and I wanted to find out more, so I went to YouTube, and I typed in your name into YouTube, and a video popped up, and, I want to talk to you about science and chemistry and biology and all that fancy shit, but I want to talk about this video first, because it's a video of you skateboarding, and bro, you're really fucking good.
Yeah, man. They used to call me Skate back in the day. I got that name from one of my friends in 7th grade. And I loved skateboarding at the time. It wasn't until about 2012, so I was about 7 years into it, that I stopped skating, and then I got into other endeavors. But yeah, I love to skateboard. I was doing some pretty interesting tricks back then, jumping off of 7 sets of stairs, doing quirks on rails and stuff. But
dude, you were really fucking good. I was thinking, did this guy go pro or something?
No, I was still just amateur. I saw some pro skaters. I hung around them, but I was nowhere near their level. They're exceptionally well.
I live by like a kind of a famous hipster skateboarding park here. It's called Stoner Park. And you see those guys all the time. I don't know, something about skateboarding, man, and just skateboarders in general, where like we were talking about, people being their authentic selves. I feel like they're like super just honest, and they're way less pretentious than like surfers and snowboarders. Yeah. What is that about? Like, well, why skateboarding? I don't know. It's so funny to me.
I have no idea. I know that most skaters I've met, they definitely don't have a filter. Whatever they want the world to perceive them as, they'll be that. So it's never like a concern to them what people think of them. So you got a good point. Surfers, I'm not too sure about, because I never really met a surfer. I do surf, and when I was in California the last time, loved surfing, but I never talked to like any of the surfers, so I have no idea.
Yeah, I had my moment. When I moved here, I bought a board. This is like we used to watch Point Break back in Russia. It was like a huge movie there. It was, you've seen Point Break, right? Keanu Reeves.
No.
You haven't seen Point Break? No. Pedro, bro. Seriously? Oh my God. I got some
TV here, man.
Oh, you don't watch nothing? Oh, you're one of those guys.
I do watch stuff. I'm on YouTube. I watch your videos. I watch other people's stuff, but it's like I never even have time to watch things on TV or movies.
Oh, but this is classic. This is Keanu Reeves and fucking Patrick Swayze, dude. This is like, you got this. You got some homework to do. No. Point Break. Yeah. Point Break. Yeah. Well, I was saying I moved to LA. I got a board. I thought it was gonna be like Point Break, and then you go out into the water, and it's like 1,000 people around you. And they're all douchey. They don't want nothing to do with you. They're all like super territorial, and you're like, if you do one wrong thing, they're like, what are you doing, man? And then I just sold my board. I was like, I can't deal with this. This is too much. So,
I can't imagine. I never had that experience with them, but I was only there for a week when I went surfing. No idea.
It was your first time visiting California?
It was the first time. Went to San Diego. Got a really good friend who lives there, and I loved it, man. But I was planning to move to Cali 2019. Things didn't work out. Now I'm in Florida, and I think for good reason, because I'm sure you're experiencing it right now with the whole shutdown.
Oh yeah. I'm one homeless guy taking a shit on the street away from fucking moving out of here. Oh, dude, it's been awful. I mean, like that's the funny thing about LA, though. Like, I call everything LA, but really, if you drive 30 minutes out of LA, you're in a different county. You're in Orange County, or you're maybe in Oxnard, and shit is different there. Completely different. Seriously, nobody's wearing masks. Nobody gives a fuck. Nobody bothers you. Everybody's a lot more chill. Yeah, people probably have more money and stuff like that, but it's just funny. And then you go to San Diego, I was just there 2 weeks ago, by the way, and I mean that's just like a completely different. It might as well not be California. Seriously, it's just a completely different planet. I was at the gym. I went to the restaurants. Nobody, not even the servers, not even the work. Nobody's wearing masks. Nobody's fucking annoying. Everybody's just like life as usual, which I think it should be by now, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard that LA is just its own niche, San Francisco is its own niche, and then everybody else outside of California
that's
is really
the worst.
relaxed.
Yeah. San Francisco. Oh no, that place can. Everybody knows how much I hate San Francisco. That place is fucking terrible, and I've always felt that way, dude. Like even before all of this, I just don't get it. Like it's these buildings. I don't know. You go take a picture in front of the what is it, Golden Gate Bridge, and then like that's it. It's just buildings and like grimy homeless people everywhere, and they have apps for people taking shit on the street and stuff like that.
Yeah, so I've heard.
Dude, it's like I don't know, not a fan. I think in California it's like this more south you go, the better it gets. So San Diego is the best. LA is like in the middle, and then you have San Francisco up there. Yeah,
definitely. When I went to San Diego, it was a totally different vibe. I mean, there's no beating San Diego. I've been to pretty much almost all the states in the coast of the USA, and San Diego by far is the best city I've been to.
I agree, man. I agree. So you were gonna move where? To LA, or where were you gonna go?
To San Diego, but still didn't work out.
Dude. I mean, if I could somehow, like blink and have my life there, I'd be there tomorrow. Seriously. I fucking love that place. And speaking of Artemis Gold, and like one of my favorite gym is there, Stearns. I mean, I fucking love Stearns.
That, ever since I watched this guy go to Stearns gym, I was like, you know what? I have to be in that gym one day or another.
So
and
did you go?
Bring it up. I mean, man, anytime I'm in California the coming year, I would love to hit you up and.
Oh, you haven't gone yet? Oh, I thought
no, never.
Oh, dude.
Never.
Oh, it's the best. I mean, it's old. You know what I'm saying? Like, if that's what you're looking for. You're definitely not going to find any, like, well, although they have, like, over the last few years, I've been going there also for a few years. Like, whenever I'd visit San Diego, I'd go down there. Over the years, they have put in some newer kind of machines. Like, they have, like, a glute machine, like, fucking everybody chicks love doing the hip bridges and shit. But besides that, it's all, like, dumbbells that have been there for, like, at least 20 years, and they have some that have been there for 40, 50 years, and they have all the benches are, barely padded. Because, back in the day when the gym opened, I think it was like 1946, I'm pretty sure, it was just, the benches were just wood. There was no flat, padding. It was just wood, so you're benching or doing whatever on the hardwood surface. And then they have these long benches that are standing, like an incline bench, they usually have a seat. They have ones that just, it's just a flat standing one where you have your feet up. Real old school, like Steve Reeves kind of style. I don't know who that is.
Yeah. That's interesting. Never seen those before. But I do know that they had those flat, thin. I mean, you're just feeling wood or metal on your back while you're doing a bench press or something. That's pretty cool, though. I like those old school.
Yeah.
The Nautilus machines, everything that they had back then.
Yeah, they got.
I think it's the oldest gym in America.
Yeah. It's all, people like to have those like best burger in town or whatever, but it's definitely up there. Because I do know that Jack LaLanne had a gym, but I'm pretty sure that was a little bit later. He had a gym, but that was North Cali. He had it up in, I think it was San Francisco. He might have been the first gym. I guess it also depends how you look at it, like, because it's like a health club or is it a gym? Back then, they were all kind of different things. But I think like it's probably the last one standing that's like that's been around since that time.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's a good spot. Lat pull down machines are connected to the ceiling. You know what I'm saying? Like when you're doing a lat pull down, usually it's a machine. Yeah, and here they're just like bolted into the ceiling and they've been bolted. It's like rusty and shit.
That's pretty cool. Never seen that before.
Yeah, there's definitely a good energy in there. You go in there and it's just a good energy. I mean, there's a lot of like old timers there too. They're just kind of doing their thing. They're not super friendly, but it's all right. One of these days, I'm gonna make a video going down there. So yeah. So was training and fitness sort of a part of your background or what?
Yeah, I mean, after I quit skating, I got into boxing. I did that for quite some time. Never really competed, but I've been around with most people that were boxing professionally around that time in Jersey City because I was in New Jersey at the time. Oh. And then after a couple of years, I got into MMA. Then after that, I was back and forth on certain things. And it wasn't until, I would say, 2019, 2018 that I got into health and health sphere nutrition really in depth. Before that, I had some ideas. I would follow people that are mainstream, like Layne Norton, who I can't stand now. But,
Oh man,
I know
he
better
went
now.
full Ray Norton, didn't he? He like really changed over the years. I feel like,
Man.
well, that's what happens when you get a super popular account and people are constantly giving you
Yep.
praise. You know, like yeah, like talk about this guy,
Yeah.
talk about how the science. I love him
Yeah.
because he's like it's as if like all the scientists in the world are contacting Ray Norton and he knows the answer. It's just like
Yep.
it's so bananas, right? It's like, dude, I don't think it's like that with anything in life. And for some reason, like
Exactly.
he has the one viewpoint that's like, well, hold on, let me tell you, calories in, calories out. This, you know,
Right.
like I was just like, oh my goodness.
Yeah, I've recently found that this guy's actually smarter than he lets off. At the moment that I stopped listening to him, I just thought, well, he just did a PhD in nutrition. He didn't know anything really. He did some studies on protein, but it wasn't until recently that I found out he did his bachelor's in biochemistry, and he went pretty far because there's levels to chemistry that people do, which is just general chemistry, organic, physical, and then you apply all of those into certain principles. He went pretty far with it, but then he decided to do a PhD in nutrition. So he's smart, but he's so rigid in the way he thinks that he never connects pieces that otherwise could be connected, like with Ray Peat. And then in return, what you get is somebody that just blames other scientists that don't think the way he does as a quack, which is the easy way out instead of thinking about things thoroughly.
Yeah, which is the most mainstream way of doing it anyways, right? Because that's been around forever, that quack word, right? Which I fucking love it. It's just like...
Yeah. What was it, 1910 or something was the first time?
Yeah. And then there was a whole slew of dudes, you know, that were doing... I went down a path one time of like, you know, these old school 1930s, 1940s kind of health gurus that would promote stuff. And, you know, it was like 80... I mean, there's lots of like dumb stuff out there. Like I can't remember. Like blackstrap molasses was really popular back then. You ever try blackstrap molasses?
I saw you post about that.
Dude, it tastes like shit. You can go fuck yourself. It tastes like shit. You can go fuck yourself. And it's not the first time. I tried it maybe, I mean, I don't know, maybe 10, 15 years ago. But I think I was having it in like a smoothie, so you don't really taste it. And you put a banana and, you know, other stuff, so you're basically hiding it. And I saw it the other day at the store, and I was like, oh, I remember this shit. And I bought it. It was like on sale, organic, you know, unsulfured also. And it tastes like shit, man. Like sugar tastes way better. Even, you know, like
really
brown sugar, it just tastes better, which is, you know, it's just the more...
What do people get it for? The iron content? Blackstrap molasses?
Yeah, well, dude, if you read the old school stuff, they were using it to apply it in their hair, to regrow hair. That was a big one. It does have like a certain amount of, like a pretty good dose of magnesium in it. It definitely has iron in it because, you know, it's like super fucking black, right?
Yeah.
And it has a bunch of other stuff. But that was one of the things that was super popular back in the day, you know? But then there was other stuff that they were saying that's just like, oh, you know, eat butter and eat fruits. And it was just like real basic stuff. And even back then, certain of these people were labeled as quacks, you know what I mean? So
right.
You gotta...
That never changes.
It never changes. So, you know, like, well, speaking of Ray Norton, so... Because I wanted to ask you, it's one of the questions I had for you. I mean, what do you think? Because it's become such a big fad of talking about like all that matters is calories in, calories out. That's all that matters.
Out.
Calories in, calories out. Like, you know what I mean? You can, I don't care. Keto can work, but it's only because calories in, calories out. Carbohydrate diet, low carbohydrate diets can work only because it's calories in, calories out. Do you think it's just as simple as that, or do you think there's more nuances to that?
Especially when you get to the real thermodynamics of how you equate for calories and how the human body utilizes calories when it comes to the brain realizing if there's a deficit or if there's a surplus of nutrients. Things get really tricky because there's so many disciplines you have to apply to really understand why the body gains weight with excess calories, or it can still gain weight when it's in a deficit. Because, you know, as somebody that goes into starvation, the moment they start applying some carbohydrates into their diet after like a long-term ketogenic diet, they just pack on weight. It's because their brain were registering that deficit for a long period of time. Anything that they consume will be stored. And sure, insulin plays a role. Other hormones like leptin play a role. But those hormones are also involved in so many other cellular processes that you can't just say insulin causes fat gain, which a lot of these doctors like to do. And that's the main target of Ray Norton and all these other mainstream scientists, is that they don't believe in the carbohydrate insulin model in causing disease. And it's true to an extent, but it's also true that calories in, calories out is not as simple as the energy expenditure that somebody puts out versus the energy intake that they take in from food. So here's an example. Say you're eating 2,000 calories, right? and you're having those 2,000 calories coming from protein, only protein. Some of those proteins will be gluconeogenic. They'll go to making glucose, but then a majority of it will go to making other important factors like peptides and certain proteins and enzymes. So the protein that gets is really important for normal cellular processes. And in return, your expenditure is a little bit higher. The thermogenic effect of food comes into play. And then what happens afterwards is you burn more fat. Same 2,000 calories, but you still burn more fat. You may not lose weight, but you definitely take fat off of your body. Your adipose tissue shrinks. You have more CO2 that's produced. You can measure all of this stuff. You take in 2,000 calories of polyunsaturated fatty acids with a bunch of processed foods, and all of a sudden your metabolism changes. Your mitochondria can't burn fuel efficiently, and your energy expenditure goes down the drain. Your basal metabolic rate drops, your thyroid hormones don't function as well. Even if you have adequate thyroid hormones being produced, if it's not signaling into the cell, hey, we need to utilize these fuel substrates for energy, nothing's going to happen. And in return, the same 2,000 calories will pack on some weight. You'll start to get not only visceral fat, but greater adipose fat, and you look just a lot more inflamed. And right there and then, you break the whole calories in, calories out model. But what these scientists like to explain is that, well, you're violating the laws of thermodynamics. That's not necessarily the case. There's a good paper that said if we equate all calories as equal, we actually violate the second law of thermodynamics. I forgot who it's by, but it's by some physicists and chemists. And the way they explained it was like, we can't really quantify all calories being the same. And especially when it comes to like the 4 kcal per gram of carbs, proteins, 9 kcal per fat, it's really not that simple. In fact, depending on the carb, the protein, the fat sources you use, you can have fluctuations. 8.7 grams, 9.3 grams per kcal per gram or so on. There's really no way to quantify it. You get an estimate.
And like a real practical example of that, which I noticed, been seeing a lot more in like the bodybuilding sphere and stuff, is, they used to say just like count your calories, right? And then eat less, right? To lose fat, eat more to gain whatever more. Recently, a lot of these like new, the ones that are really popular on guru kind of bodybuilder types, what they're saying is like, well, listen, I'm never going to be able to calculate exactly how much calories I'm getting from food and exactly how much I should be burning. But it's about the, overall estimate that, so it's like, so it really was never simple that way, was it? You guys were just kind of, going by feel, right? You're just paying attention. And I think that's a real practical way of explaining that.
I don't know where the calories in, calories out model originated. But from what I remember, it was never meant to be used as a guideline for just determining weight loss and weight gain. It was for other purposes as well. And it became popular for the weight loss, weight gain category because, people tout the laws of thermodynamics, but they've never really done thermodynamics at the level of a physicist or a chemist, a physical chemist that utilizes thermodynamics for a lot of different energy-related equations. You find out that it's never that simple. For example, the thermodynamics they apply for calories is with an isolated system. The human body is a system that is not isolated. There's fluctuations in energy and how our body utilizes energy from different matter, like carbon sources of glucose, nitrogen sources of protein. And that in turn basically flips the whole calories in, calories out model in its head. That isn't to say, though, that the calories still matter. They're a measure of energy. But it's never as simple as you have to expand more than you consume. There's other factors at play. And they'll always say that, and then they'll go back and reiterate, well, even with those factors at play, it's still calories out versus calories in.
That's exactly what they do. That's exactly what they do. And like, have you ever done, a low-carb diet? Have you messed around with your diets to extreme ways? Yeah? Doing carnivore, doing vegan?
I do a lot of different things. I try a lot of different approaches because I want to see how it feels. I want to see why it fails. Like with Paul Saladino doing the carnivore diet, I know why he failed. You feel like you're freezing. Your hands are just cold. The moment you touch a carbohydrate after doing a couple of months of carnivore, even a couple of weeks, it's like your body temperature just goes up in a couple of minutes. 10 minutes, you see the veins in your hand popping out. You feel more relaxed. You feel at ease. Obviously, the carnivore diet is increasing catecholamine activity. So even though you may not see higher stress levels, your brain is registering higher stress levels. The moment those carbs come in, shuts it down. So I've done a lot of that.
You messed around. When I think I got into it First, when I probably read Paul Chek's writings, the whole metabolic typing, Paul Chek is.
Yeah,
So
I never listened to his stuff.
Bald guy from San Diego. Yeah, you got to be careful with him. He says a lot. He talks about magic wands and stuff like that too. So you got to be careful with him. No joke. But he had this whole system of metabolic typing, which is sort of that idea, like if your ancestors are from Russia, they were probably eating a lot of fat and, a few starchy carbs.
Yeah.
And then if your ancestors were from Hawaii, which he likes to bring up, it's like they were eating pineapple. But if you give if you give somebody from Alaska the pineapple, they're going to get fat. And if you give somebody from Hawaii the fat, they're going to get fat. So it's like, you got to follow your metabolic type. So I was, adhering to a low carbohydrate diet for a very long time. And it doesn't mean I was, full Paul Saladino or full Sean Baker kind of style. But, I was eating pretty low carb for years. And as soon as I started adding carbs in, when my brain kind of changed, when I really shifted my ideas, when I really started questioning everything, what you were talking about earlier, dude, I gained a lot of weight. I gained like 20 fucking pounds, like 20 pounds. But over the course of a year, it did take me a while. And I did feel a little bloated, which is right away for me the idea in my mind was like, oh, well, it's not really calories in, calories out. Yeah, maybe I was eating a lot more, a little more calories, but I know that I wasn't like pigging out like a fat fuck. I just drastically changed my, my diet, and it was really fast because, I like to explore things. And, dude, I gained like 20 pounds, but over the course of a year, 5 pounds, 10 pounds came off, 15 pounds came off, and then I was just back exactly to where I was. So, but it did take a while, and I feel like there was an adjustment period, that adjustment period, I mean, it took some time, but that whole calories in, calories out thing, kind of that broke it for me right there,
Right. Yeah, man. I don't know what else to say about that. I could go on a whole tangent about it with kilojoules versus calories and what they're saying is manifesting as energy expenditure and intake in the human body, in the cell, in the mitochondria. There's so much that you can go into when it comes to calories, but it's up to you if you want to go down that rabbit hole.
Sure. Well, we can explore things. You brought up PUFA also, and you brought up Ray Peat. How'd you get into, now he's become like, I'm fucking seeing his name everywhere, right? Everywhere. What's up with that? Everywhere. I don't know if it was Danny that popularized it. Like, I mean, well, obviously he's the man, but I'm saying like, I don't know what happened in the course of the last year. I was at the park the other day, dude, and this guy goes, oh, I was doing a carnivore diet, and then I found out about Ray Peat. I was like, who are you? Because 5 years ago, if I would have said Ray Peat, it's like no one has heard of him, right?
Yep, that's so true, man. When I found out about Ray Peat, it was 2015.
Okay.
First time I listened to him was because of Christopher Walker. You know who that is, right? The Uzu guy.
Uh-huh.
He had a couple of posts on thyroid health before he made all of his thyroid guides. And he mentioned
big ball
Danny
supplements.
Roddy.
I'm sorry, dude.
Yeah.
Big ball supplements. That commercial. Oh my god, dude.
Yeah. It's like the Grego Gallagher version, but in the.
Yeah. He's the new version of that. What was that Asian dude that was on YouTube that was like, hey, I think it was like Mike.
6-pack abs.
Yes, my man. Remember those
true.
stupid videos? It'd be like, don't eat a zucchini, eat a cucumber. It was just the dumbest shit ever, right? And you don't know why.
Yeah, I'm sure his stuff helps people, but yeah, it's very generic.
Well, he changed his tune. He's still around, I think, right? He's still doing like...
I don't know.
I have no idea. But I saw him a little bit later. He cut the hair short, and I was like, oh, that fucking guy. I remember him. Yeah. So anyway, you were saying about Ray Peat and all that. And Mike
he
Walker.
posted about the thyroid health stuff, which is the first time I had learned about thyroid-related mechanisms. I had no idea what a thyroid even was, 2015. And I watched the first Ray Peat video with Danny Roddy when he used to have his quick segments of discussions between him and Ray only, before even Georgie was part of it. And it was interesting to me because I knew that they were onto something that nobody else looked into. It was a very unique perspective. But the moment that I found out about Ray recommending Coca-Cola, it turned me off. At that time, of course, I had no idea. I didn't know any better, but just the idea of a processed food kind of turned me off. Yeah. It wasn't until 2018 I started hearing about him again. But 2020, the month that the pandemic hit, so March, I started listening more to Ray Peat because I started learning more about molecular biology and all of these different sciences, and it clicked. Mm-hmm. Everything Ray was talking about, all of a sudden, it clicked for me. I was like, this dude is way ahead of the curve. the things that he connects, the way he explains the mechanisms behind why things look a certain way in a certain study, and then even though it may be an opposite result in another study, it's actually following a specific reasoning. It was like the whole world just fell into like all the puzzle pieces came together. Do you know who a Johnny Omnivore is? Does he sound familiar?
Johnny, that does sound familiar. I'm not sure though who it is.
He follows like Ray Peat's principle, and he had a post of just Pete in I forgot what that movie that they came out with was with Think, Perceive, Act. I forgot the name of it.
On the back of a tiger, or
on the back of a tiger.
Right. Yeah.
So he just had the picture of Pete where he's just thinking like this, and on the caption it said, "When you've been confused by all of the nutritional gurus, scientists, and doctors in the Instagram sphere, and the gods finally decide to award you with the one above all." And that's basically Ray Peat, man. It's so true. Everything that was once confusing, it just made sense for me in 2020. And then after like the middle of 2020 is when I noticed everybody starting to get on the Ray Peat wave.
Yeah, there's a lot of Instagram accounts. There's a lot of pictures, memes of Ray Peat sitting there in like a god meme, and he has he has like ice creams around him, Haagen-Dazs around him, right? And there's like Coca-Colas behind him, or vice versa. I can't remember which one it is. Yeah, but that's funny. So, like one of his biggest things that he always talks about, obviously, is PUFA. So they were probably weren't even on your radar. I mean, I don't think they were really on anyone's radar.
Nope.
I've heard his name probably around the same time I found out about Paul Chek, because by that time, a lot of Paul Chek's students or followers, whatever, were kind of moving on to other things, and Ray Peat was one of the names that came up. And I found out about him. The only thing with me, the way I was kind of turned off by Ray Peat, though, at first, I just want to let people know, is he was talking about visiting Russia, and that there was at the time that he visited Russia, this was like Soviet Union era, there was a bad milk supply, and that was the reason that he saw a lot of obese people in Russia. And let me tell you, I know the milk supply in America is a lot better, but there's a lot more fat fucks here than in Russia. All right, I'm gonna be honest about it. It's not the milk supply, but so that was the thing for me. So that I kind of heard that story from him, and then I kind of was like, okay, I'm just gonna kind of look at some other stuff, and then I eventually came back around and started looking at his ideas. And one of the first ideas, well, the biggest thing probably that he talks about, right, is the avoidance of PUFA. So that wasn't on your radar, and then once you got into his stuff, did you go down a whole rabbit hole of that?
Yeah, so the PUFA in specific seed oils was on my radar, but it wasn't because of me. James DiNicolatano is a doctor who's a pharmacist as well, or pharmacal doctor, and he talks a lot about avoiding omega-6. He had a paper that came out, he doesn't even know about Ray Peat at the time, detailing that omega-6s are likely playing a role in oxidized tissue. And then in return, what happens is you get a high risk of like atherosclerosis and all of the other mediated diseases from oxidized omega-6s. But what Ray stuck out to me the most about was omega-3s. And I didn't have any inhibition when I heard it for the first time. When I realized that, wait a second, if omega-6s are bad, Ray discusses omega-3s being even more unsaturated, being bad. It has to, there's a logical reasoning behind it. Most people get turned off as soon as they hear fish oil be bad. Right away, it made sense to me. It wasn't until I did organic chemistry, advanced orgo, that I noticed he's absolutely right in more ways than people can ever hope to realize, unless they've taken those courses in chemistry. Once you take those courses, you understand the mechanism, the reasoning, and the expected outcomes when it comes to unsaturated fatty acids, any polyunsaturated fatty acid. To me, Ray is absolutely right. I could go into the reasons why in specific. It's up to you, or if you want to.
Yeah. I'd love to explore that, man. Because a lot of people. I also want to talk about the ratios too, because, dude, do you remember?
To me, that's.
Yeah. Do you remember Udo's Oil? Do you remember that? I don't know. They might be still around. Udo's Oil. It was a really popular supplement brand. He was like the first. I don't know if he was the first, but one of the first major popular brands where. Because people started already selling omega-3s, fish oil stuff, and he was the one that was like, oh, no, this one has, my oil has omega-3, omega-6, and omega-9. And I used to drink that shit for a while. So it took me quite some time to realize that I was feeling really bad after doing that. Yeah, and fish oil.
Yeah, man, I think fish oil is like cigarettes. You don't notice it's causing harm until 5 to 10 years down the road. That's the problem. And most of these studies don't last 5 to 10 years. And if they do, they're usually observational. They're not interventional. And in that case, you're going to get maybe some good results and bad results at the same time. Like, for example, I know with omega-6s, it took about 5 years for them to start seeing an increase in cancer. I forgot which study it was. And then if they had done it longer, they had expected an even worse outcome, but it wasn't performed longer. So I don't think most people realize you may feel good in the short term, but in the long run, the symptoms will start to present themselves because damage is starting to accumulate.
Mm-hmm. So what do you think, when doctors like Rhonda Patrick really promote fish oil? I mean, she obviously, nobody's perfect, right?
Right. Yeah.
But she must be getting it from somewhere, right? So where do you think she's pulling that stuff from that she's so on, fish oil, that she's so for it?
I know it's the mainstream articles, observational studies that come out and say these group of people were taking fish oil, and a couple of years later, they experienced less stroke outcomes, heart disease outcomes, whatever. And so because they were taking the fish oil at a certain dosage for a long period of time, it's obvious to her that, well, the logical conclusion is the fish oil benefited them. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm not sure exactly which studies she looked at and the duration and exactly the model that they use, because the model plays an important role. Like, I know Kyle just made a video on his second law of nutrition, not thermodynamics. Mm-hmm. And it was an absolutely amazing video because it details that you can do a clinical trial and you can expect a result. But if you don't know the other factors at play, mm-hmm. you can have multiple results show up that may either be of detriment or may seem like it was out of nowhere. And so the study can be disregarded. But mm-hmm. when it comes to these fish oil studies that she cites, they're looking at health outcomes, and they probably don't focus on the type of people that they investigate. They usually have a healthy lifestyle as it is. They try to mitigate any kind of stresses in their life. They don't smoke. They don't drink alcohol. So, of course, if you take those supplements and you have a better outcome, you can say it was because of the supplement. But what if it was because of the lifestyle factors involved as well? Mm-hmm. And that's a bias that comes in. So I think that's at play.
You mean is that kind of a thing of, like, when they do like meat eaters versus vegetarian kind of studies, right? Yeah. Where it's like, vegetarians probably, don't smoke, exercise, or do a lot of things because they are vegetarian, because they're, they think they're doing something healthy for themselves. And maybe whatever, even if they are, but the point is that they're paying attention to their health versus the average American in Kansas that goes to McDonald's every day, right? And eats.
Bingo.
That's called a meat eater, but it's like, is that meat?
Is it really just meat? Exactly.
Yeah, is it really the meat, or is it it's not like he's eating grass-fed steaks or whatever, right?
Exactly.
So
there's
mm-hmm. Sorry, go ahead, man.
There's the interventional stuff. You're good. Where they look at the people that take fish oils and they see, well, look, fish oil decreased inflammation, increase the amount of immune cells that were active against a certain thing, mm-hmm. decrease arthritis, whatever it is. And it's just like a 6 month, 1 year study. And they then do the biomechanisms involved. Fish oil produces protectins, resolvins, marinins. These are all different compounds that are byproducts of oxidation of fish oil. Mm-hmm. And what they don't mention is that it's not really reducing inflammation. It's reducing immune responses. Mm. It acts like as if you had a fire and you just put a cap on the fire, and so oxygen can't get in. But as soon as you take the cap off and oxygen returns, the fire is going to light even worse. That's mm-hmm. what fish oil is basically doing, suppressing the immune system so these outcomes look like they're beneficial. In reality, it's once again like you're taking an immunosuppressive drug. Mm-hmm. So to me, even though the positive outcomes are indeed accurate, they're not accurate for the right reasons. They're accurate for the wrong reasons. They're saying it's protective, it's anti-inflammatory. No, it's immunosuppressive, and thus it looks that way.
How does it work? Like, what does that mean? Immunosuppressive. Can you break that down for us?
So if you were to take, here's a perfect example. Doctors don't want you to take fish oil before surgery because if you were doing any kind of open surgery where you say you had to do a heart transplant, you're not supposed to take fish oil for two reasons. It thins your blood, and it also makes your immune system suppressed. And so you're at higher risk of being infected with hospital-acquired infections, like bacterial infections of catheters or yeast, whatever it may be. And they don't give immunosuppressive to patients unless they're doing an organ transplant. And then that moment, what's a useful alternative to immune suppression drugs and organ transplants? Fish oil. Works the same way. It suppresses the immune system from attacking the organ itself. So fish oils aren't acting as an anti-inflammatory. They're stopping the immune-mediated inflammation, like the cytokines that get released, the signaling factors that are pro-inflammatory. That's how fish oil shows its beneficial outcomes. But over the long run, what do you get? You get, one, increases in oxidants that can form adducts of DNA, increasing risk for cancer, that can form adducts of protein, destroying how the protein functions, that destroys the cellular membrane. And so signaling between cell to cell basically stops. But they don't mention that. And if they do look at those markers, it's usually after the liver has metabolized a lot of these oxidative byproducts. But that's not the right way to look at them. You want to look at what's happening inside of the cell, which is much more difficult for researchers to quantify.
So basically they're just taking a Tylenol, right? Kind of, you know what I'm saying? It's just, it kind of makes you feel good for the second or whatever, but it's long-term. Yeah. It's
damaging.
I did not know that about surgeries. It's a good point, man. So have you ever fucked around with taking it, supplementing it? Were you before you found that? Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I think it as much as Ray Peat harps upon it being bad, I think what he means the most is that you don't want to be taking it long term. But in a clinical setting, if somebody had a blood clot and they were going to die from it, if they had taken fish oil right there and then, it would thin out the blood and they may survive from the blood clot. So it could be a medicinal use only, but it's not meant to be taken, as Rhonda Patrick says, 500 to 1,000 milligrams per day every single day for however long.
Forever, yeah.
Yeah.
But aspirin could do the same thing, couldn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And aspirin actually prevents the oxidative byproducts. Didn't want to mention that.
So speaking of that, did you hear about the new guidelines that came out about aspirin? No, that they recently said that people who've been taking their daily aspirin just shouldn't take it anymore. Basically, it was just like, nah, it's not good at all anymore.
Wow.
Yeah,
Why? Why did they?
Oh God, man, I have no idea. I don't, as soon as I saw that, I was like, oh, it makes sense. I don't know all the the research stuff, but yeah. I think they said the only people that should be taking it is people who have had, I may be wrong on this,
heart
but
disease or something.
already have had a stroke or a heart attack already though. So it's like, oh, don't even think about preventing any of this stuff. It's completely useless. Come to our doctor's office. We'll get you something better, a little bit more expensive.
Exactly. You take the most inexpensive drug anybody can get for over 3 months supply, and then you try to substitute it for another drug, like what's happening with I don't want to say the virus I'm talking about, and the horse dewormer.
Oh yeah. Well, that was hilarious. I mean, come on, that was really funny. I mean, I really, and again, Joe Rogan, sometimes says some dumb shit too, but I'm sure I do too. You know what I mean? Nobody's perfect, but I do love the way that he dealt with that situation. I don't know if you saw, but he had, what was that guy's name from CNN on?
Sanjay Gupta.
Yeah, and he just kind of called him out, and fuck, it was so good. Like, it was like, oh, thank you, it felt so good just to watch him like suffer, just like, yes, oh man. And then of course all the memes of Joe Rogan with a horse head came out. So I mean, it was a good situation. So do you mess around with taking aspirin? Do you do some of the Ray Peat traditional, supplements like aspirin, progesterone? Thyroid, of course.
I definitely haven't tried progesterone. I haven't tried T3 by itself or T4. I have tried natural desiccated thyroid, so ancestral supplements and their thyroid extract. And to me, that works amazingly well. I get results every single time I take it. In fact, if I take more than 2 of the capsules, I start to feel symptoms of hyperthyroidism, where I'm a little too agitated, a little bit sweaty. So it works for me. So I never had to try anything else. But aspirin, I don't take regularly. If I take it, maybe because I'm super stressed out or I'm doing too much at once, or if after a workout I just feel overwhelmed, I'll take an aspirin. That's usually the only times I do use it. I never use it on a daily basis. I don't see a problem really if you take a low dose. They talk about the gastric thinning so basically the epithelium of the stomach thins, and then you become more prone to gastric bleeding. But I think it's dependent on something else. You have to be deficient in something else. I think Danny mentions vitamin K1.
Usually, I was going to say
K1.
K is the one that comes up. Yeah, I've seen some people say K1, other people say K2, but whatever. One of the Ks. I don't know. I don't take it that much, that regularly, but I have taken 5 at a time and standard dose. And I don't know. I've never felt any intestinal problems from it. I don't know. Maybe it's just a personal thing, but I actually never met anybody that have had any
Me
stomach
neither.
problems. You haven't either, huh? No idea where that comes. Well, I mean, it is an acid, right? So it can do that, right?
Yeah, it's a weak acid, but if that were the case, any weak acid should be doing the same thing. For example, vinegar should be doing the same thing, but it's not.
That's a good point. That's a good point. And so, what about thyroid and all progesterone, all that good stuff? You're saying
I used to
progesterone
be,
never fucked around, but sorry.
yeah, I used to be really against hormone mimetics and replacement therapy, but it's just impossible to maintain a good state of health in modern times without some additional support. There's no way you can do all of the different carnivore diets you want. You can take all of the different organs. It will not equate to the same as taking a couple of micrograms of cytomel or whatever else, any other hormone that you want to try. And I think that's why they have hormone replacement therapies for both men and women, because it's powerful. It keeps your system running at an efficient level.
So what do you think about, your thoughts on TRT and stuff? Because that's also becoming, I mean, every guy I know is on TRT nowadays.
Yeah.
And especially in Florida, all those clinics, they love those fucking clinics in Florida.
They have a lot here, man. I would say it's useful for somebody that has done, for example, steroids and they can't come back from it. No matter what they try, their T levels aren't coming back up. In that case, the TRT is going to be a panacea for them. They need to take it. It's going to help them out a lot. But if you can resist it, I would, because you never want to be dependent upon something.
Yeah.
And that's the thing with thyroid, for example. You don't really become dependent on thyroid supplementation. It just helps your system run better. And as you get older, it's just going to reduce more and more. Whereas you really have to be dependent on TRT to produce your testosterone going forward if you ever stop producing your own.
Yeah. Now, here's my thing with TRT, though. And correct me, do you know, I don't know how much research you've done into it, but I'm pretty sure all the, like cypionate, all those kind of esters, right? I'm pretty sure they're in cottonseed oil, aren't they? Isn't that the oil?
I have no idea in regards to that.
So that's my thing with the TRT stuff, because there's a lot of oil in there. And you ever thought about that? I don't know if people,
No, I didn't.
The last time I checked, and this was like when I was really interested in it. This was, I don't know, probably 5 years ago. But yeah, I remember looking up, and it seemed like almost all of them are suspended in cottonseed oil. And in that case, my thoughts are...
You're getting...
I don't know, right?
You're getting the PUFAs with it.
Yeah, so, how would you go around that? I don't know.
Yeah, man. I know that hormones in our bodies are surrounded by cholesterol and saturated fat, so I don't know why they wouldn't try to mimic that. But obviously, cottonseed oil is cheap. It's easy to acquire now with the manufacturing processes that they have. And I'm sure there's always some industry that wants people to use, medical industry, to use their oil that they can get money off of it. Because, if you have a product that's used by every single hospital for every single TRT, obviously they're going to get large sums of money from it. So that makes total sense.
Of course. I had some clients that were on like orals. I have no idea what that was. Have you heard of those?
No.
No? No idea either. But I mean, I guess that sounds like there's no oil in it. But that's been my thought with, have you ever played around with testosterone replacement?
No, I've never done any. I've seen a lot of steroids because I used to do personal training. The people that I worked with, they were on it, and the way that they use some of them were either oral or injection, but never seen or paid attention much to what they were composed of.
Yeah, well, it's only a matter of time. You live in Florida, bro, so.
Yes, I'm part of it now.
What is it about Florida, you think? Why is it there's definitely clinics here, but LA is so, I realize that if you live here, I don't think I'll spend the rest of my life here, thank God. But, I think you're going to be just so dependent on the system for everything, for money, for, health stuff. It's all going to be like, you go to this place and they tell you what to take and what they can give you, and you take it and you go home and you sit like a robot and you do what they tell you. But something about Florida, man, just screams freedom, where people just go to these clinics. I love it, bro.
What's your thoughts on moving here then? Like, I know Kyle's here. He's in UCF, and I'm pretty close to Tampa area. So
yeah,
you ever
those are
decide?
my thoughts, my man. Those are my thoughts. It's yeah, like I said, it's really just a matter of my work being here, really, because
I understand.
everything I don't want to, I'm from Russia. I don't want to move to a cold climate anymore. Like I'm so fucking done with it.
Fucking
Like
hate the cold,
and I
man.
lived in Midwest in America, so I know what it's like here. I lived in Chicago. It's fucking awful over there. It's just like Russia in the winter. It's terrible. Which is funny, right? Like you'll watch like Rocky, and it's like the worst winter ever. Remember, he's like training in the fucking in the snow. Chicago is the same. You don't have to go to Russia. It's right here. Like it's just exactly the same.
Too funny.
But yeah, man. So I don't like. I've been here for a long time, so I'm like so over cold. I don't want to move anywhere cold unless I guess I don't know. There's Ray Peat lives there, and they give me $1 million or some shit. I'm just joking, but. Yeah, Florida is looking good. The only thing that I have heard, though, is that humidity is awful, man. I've heard it's fucking awful. Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah?
From May till August, you're definitely going to get some humidity. It's not as bad as Texas. I don't know if you've ever been to Texas, but in
Austin.
Texas, it's worse.
Yeah. Listen, Austin is
Austin,
just
it's
a
worse than
mini
Florida.
Venice, California. It's just a bunch of these like keep Austin weird. These people with green hair. Just fuck off. Go be weird. Just shut up. Whatever happened to like you being weird because you want to be weird? You know what I'm saying? Like you want to be a punk. Like be punk.
Yeah.
Like that's cool. It's not cool if you have to tell me that you have to be punk and I have to accept you as a punk. You know what I mean? Like if you want to be weird, be fucking weird. I'm all for people doing what they want, but like skateboarders, you know what I'm saying? They just do whatever the fuck they want. They don't ask anybody, like, hey, can I skate here? Like, no, they just fucking do it, right? Oh my God.
Have you heard about the Florida man or the meth heads in Florida?
Yeah. Well, I'm also aware, again, being from Russia, like I'm also aware of propaganda. And I noticed that as soon as I moved to California, there's this like massive propaganda. And I swear to God, dude, like it's really real. You talk to anybody from LA, they think that everywhere across America, it's all just a bunch of rednecks who shoot guns, and especially Florida. It's just full of just these people who have one tooth and they just have shotguns, and that's all they do. That's like everybody in LA thinks that way of Florida. So yeah.
I mean, you got some areas that are like that for sure, but they're more inland.
Yeah.
Anywhere in the coast, it's more like. I mean, the Pacific side of the western side in the Gulf area is very, very old school because there's a lot of retirees that come here, and then the east side is the closest it's going to get to, say, San Diego. Honestly, that's the best comparison you have with the east side of Florida.
I think I'll be there in a few years for sure. I'm telling you. We'll it's just like it's funny. It's also about what you're used to, because people talk that way, like I said, about the rest of America. California, like I said, they think everybody else is a fucking redneck and they don't know anything. But it's funny that, dude, I can take you 10 minutes away from my house and I'll show you a giant, massive homeless encampment. And they're doing meth in there right on the street. And dudes get shot all the time over there. And it's right here. You know what I mean? And they think that it's like that in other places, but because they're so used to it. Like, here's a perfect example. Like, I had many friends visit me here. And, I'll be like at a stoplight, whatever, we'll be chatting. And there'll be some homeless guy just standing on the street, just, yelling, just like acting out. And I don't even notice it anymore. It's just a part of the scenery for me. It's just like, people are like, oh my God. And I realize like, oh, you just become numb to shit that you're always around, so yeah, that's my bit about
that's pretty crazy though, man. There's always some of that influences you and the way you see the world, because what surrounds you always has an effect on you. Like what Ray says, the environment that you live in does play a role in your state of mind and your health. Yeah. How flexible you are with your thinking.
Yeah. I mean, I just stayed here, bro. I just came here. I went to college and I just was like, okay, I just stayed here. It just became a thing. It's not that, I mean, having a family here and like raising kids here, people who are doing it, dude, they're slaves. They're working 14 hours a day. Yeah. They get in their Tesla. They drive back, they eat some chicken salad from some shitty place for $25, and they drive home and they have nannies watching their kids all day long. I mean, they have no lives. And it's like you have those 2 days on the weekend where they, go somewhere. To me, it's like, I don't know. I really would rather live in Kansas or some, cold place or something like that. It's not a place to be. Florida, my man. And it's becoming kind of, dude, everybody's moving. Austin, like I'm good. Unless there's just something that really comes up that I got to go to Austin. I don't know. I've been there. It's like so humid, the whole weird thing. It's like, oh, that's cool. Like,
Austin's basically a second LA at this point.
It really
they're having
is.
their own homeless problems.
Yeah, it really is. I don't know. I mean, I know Rogan's there, right? Everybody's moving there. But to me, it's like, if I'm going to be in that humidity, I might as well move to Florida, right? Have beaches and stuff.
Right. I mean, the beaches here are definitely nicer for sure.
White sand.
What did white sand. What did you do what do you do there? What's your job? The degree that you have?
I work with clients. I kinesiology. That's what I did. And,
nice, gotcha.
Yeah, physiotherapy, all that stuff, and then just realized that I was kind of tired of getting brainwashed, so I just started working for myself.
I see that you train with or you've trained with like Dmitry Koklov, was it? Olympic weightlifter? Yeah, dude, that's amazing.
Charles Paul.
That's some next level stuff.
Yeah. Oh, he's a legend. And just a normal guy. He had like that day that I posted that picture. I remember he had like a grilled cheese sandwich for breakfast, and then he went and snatched whatever. There's a video on YouTube. It's like an old school Russian weightlifter trick where you pick up the weight and hold it. He's gonna do a snatch. Like a pause snatch, meaning like he'll come up halfway, right? He's just holding it, and while you're holding it, he says recites a poem. And then he finishes the snatch. So he's like doing like an isometric hold with like, I don't know, 140 kilos or something insane.
Just 140 kilos, nothing too much.
Yeah, that was filmed in Bro's Gym in Las Vegas. I filmed that. That was me filming it. So he said like recited some poem to his wife, and it was really sweet, and then fucking snatched it up.
That's amazing.
Yeah, he's an animal. So what kind of fitness stuff are you into? What was
right
your
now,
background in that? Mm-hmm.
Right now I'm just doing powerlifting and typical bodybuilding stuff, but I'm hoping that soon I start getting back into MMA, because you can be as strong as you want. You can do 500 pounds in a bench press. You can deadlift 700 pounds. As soon as you're in the mat, it's totally different. As soon as you're against somebody that is physically hitting you, those numbers don't matter for anything. Yeah. With like grappling and holding on to people and then trying to use your strength against them, sure, it helps, but everything else is non-translatable. So to me, that's the most important, is having the functional aspect of fitness, which is being able to beat people up.
Strong is just a word we use, man, really. I always say that too to my clients. It's like, listen, Anderson Silva, I guarantee you he can't squat double body weight, but he can head kick you in the fucking head and you'll die. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Like, it just depends what you mean by strong. You mean strong like in the weight room, strong in life, strong in grappling, strong in weightlifting. I think it's, and over the years, like, it's really become, training and kinesiology has really infiltrated that the scenes of professional athletes and professional training. But I'm getting to a point where it's kind of it's getting to a point where it's looked at as if like, oh, this is why he won. It's because he has the best trainer in the world. And, like Conor McGregor, it's because he's doing cycling 50 kilometers a day. And he has this fantastic kinesiologist, sports trainer who knows exactly what he's doing. That's why he's knocking guys out. And it's funny enough, right? Like I brought him up. Like if you look at his career, back when he was doing just basic shit over there in Ireland, that's when he was actually KOing dudes. And the last few fights, right, hasn't happened, has it?
Yeah, that's such a good point. It's the basics and just reiterating the basics over and over again. The moment he started training with Ido Portal, do you know who that is?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I worked with him.
That's when it was basically down here.
Yep. And, and again, it's like people even gave Ido so much credit because that was still he had the fight with Diaz, right? And right before that, he knocked out Chad Smith. Who the fuck is Chad Smith? Chad Smith.
That's the power lifter. I forgot his name. Juggernaut training, something like that.
Chad Smith? Why the fuck did that name came out of my mouth?
I don't know.
Chad Mendes, yeah. Chad Mendes. But yeah, what we were saying, it's just, and then he got Ido, right? But people were like, oh, it's because he's doing the movement training, which is that's why he's KOing dudes.
Yeah.
I've been meaning to get some more trainers like yourself and whatever people that have experience in the gym and to talk about this on my podcast, because it's like I said, there's only so much you can do in the weight training room that'll translate. And whatever will translate, to me, it's just it's like the glue that kind of holds you together. It's not going to turn somebody who can't hit, who's not a strong power puncher, it's not going to turn Mayweather into Mike Tyson. No matter how hard he trains, no matter if he hires Louis Simmons and he fucking gets together with Chad Smith and gets his bench press up, like, it won't change him as a human.
Yeah.
Could it make his punch a little bit stronger? Yes. Could it make him a little bit faster? Yes. But it's not going to change who he is as a fighter, as an athlete. It's like, track coaches have that saying, right? You aren't born fast. Or, I'm sorry, we don't make you faster. God damn it, I keep fucking it up. You're born fast, and we make you faster. You're not going to be born a slow, medium runner, and you're going to come train with me because I'm the best. I coached Ben Patrick in the fucking Toronto, whatever, in the Olympics, and I'm going to improve your running, and I'm going to make it tenfold times better. No, you'll just get better by doing the training with your coach. But you're already born fast. Like Usain Bolt, he was born like a fucking, he's born a cheetah, He's not born a fucking giraffe and then, like, through all that hard work and training, he became a cheetah. No, I'm guarantee you he was outrunning fucking everybody over there in Jamaica, you know what I'm saying? So it's like that with training, physical training. It became this thing of, like, fighters seeking out the best trainers that'll, like, improve their game, and then they're going out and getting into fights, and they're like, wow, I'm still performing the same. It's like, you're not going to change yourself. You're not going to change who you are through that.
There's a baseline starting point for athletes, and you see the same thing happening in microbiology with other organisms. Like, you always have a baseline level of attributes, and you can only build upon it so much before you hit a certain limit. The only way to pass that is with performance enhancement drugs. That's the only way.
Yeah, that's a good example too, like you said, right? Because you're not going to I could take all the fucking steroids in the world, and yes, I'll grow. I mean, that's another thing that like people who are, like, claim to be natties that aren't really natties say, like, you're not going to be big. Like, no, bro, I'll be big. I'll grow. Like, I'll ruin my liver. I'll ruin everything in my body, but I'll grow. But I'm still not going to be Ronnie Coleman. You know what I mean? Like, it's not going to change. You still have to be born Ronnie Coleman and then add all that other insane shit that they do. And then that's how you become, the elite of the elite. Do you know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yes, yeah, absolutely right. You could explain that for example, everybody has a different set of genes that gets translated, and whatever level that those genes get translated, that's basal transcription, or the baseline level that those genes translate. And some people, like Ronnie Coleman, will have genes that are increasing in translation of myostatin inhibition, and so he works on muscle more effectively than somebody else that doesn't have that same level of transcription or translation. And that can be a real determinant factor in, will you have success in a sport or not? And in that case, some people like Ronnie Coleman are just born a certain way, like you mentioned, and they have a span in which they can increase their strength and their size so much that it seems abnormal, but to them was actually within their framework. Like, it was possible for them.
Yeah. And you've worked with clients, so have you noticed that? Like, I've definitely noticed that. I have clients that I give them the same workout. I give two different clients similar workouts. One guy just blows up like a fucking balloon. You know what I mean? And another guy, we have to do sets after sets after sets for him to gain a little bit of muscle.
Yeah.
And you could blame, but then the trainer gets blamed sometimes too, right? So it's like, people are so different, man, and it's really crazy how they're different, but they're really different because I know guys that work out once a week and really do eat a shitty diet, and they're jacked. I know lots of dudes like that.
Yeah. I used to be that way myself. I've always had abdominals. I never had to work my abs out, but
see, there we go. Perfect example. I'm the complete opposite, bro. I was doing 250 leg raises, 250 daily and running, bro. And that I just the worst. My dad is a musician, my mom was a school teacher. Like, just the worst genetics ever. So, like, I'm not a muscle mass monster. For me to, the best shape I was ever in, I had to lift 6 days a week, eat so much that I was, like, just disgusted by it. Like, I know that's not me. I would never be a physique competitor. It's not the way I'm built.
you have other strengths. Like I'm sure you're strong as fuck when you probably lift more than most people your size and weight.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, so that's but physique wise, it's terrible. You know, like I see you sitting right here, your fucking big bicep peaks already peeking out. Do you know how many curls I had to do just to get him to look a little shapely? Like it's insane, you know. Now legs, for example, for me, like legs, that's one of my strong suits. Like I'll squat once a week. Yeah, it's right away. You know, I wish it was that way for my arms.
Yeah, I think most people, once they realize that, that's when they start to try different supplements, different routines, different training programs, and you may see some progress and results with them. But once again, it's you can, I don't want to say it's dependent on genetics because it's not. There's more that goes into it, but you have a baseline and you have a range of how much you can progress. And usually your progression will always fall within that range. It's only until you've done training for years that you hit the plateau, and then you consider different things like maybe SARMs or steroids or whatever else you have in mind. And then that maybe pushes you just a little bit further for such a short period of time. After 2 to 3 years, you recoil and you're right back where you were.
So here's an interesting thing to talk about then, because we talked about Ray Peat and we talked about genetics now. Because, in the Ray Peat world, it's sort of kind of like the genetic part is kind of played down, right? It's kind of as if Ray is not even a fan of that whole idea at all, right? Do you know what I mean? Like,
I could understand why.
Yeah.
I think Kyle's also not too much of a fan of genetics. I mean, I could explain probably as best as I believe their perspective on why, and it definitely is true to an extent, but certain conditions, for example, severe immunodeficiency, you can't escape that. If you don't take care of that and you don't do a bone transplant for immune cells, you're going to die within 2 years. And that's a true genetic disease that can't be overcome. Down syndrome is another one. You have 321 chromosomes. There's no escaping it. You're going to have Down syndrome unless you take out the chromosome before the baby's born, which is going to be exceptionally difficult to do. So there's true genetic diseases.
Yeah.
But I think both Ray and Kyle, I believe that the way they see it is once you're born, the genes that you have don't just determine what's going to happen to you. And there's a whole list of reasons why that is.
Yeah, well, we'd have to bring on Kyle here because maybe we'll get a threesome going with you guys one of these days. We'll get that. We'll make that happen. Kyle, I don't want to speak for him, but I don't think he agrees with everything on Ray Peat as far as the genetic stuff. We'll talk about it maybe in another time. Yeah, because do you think it's sort of like that super, super, super simplified analogy of, genetics, genes are the guns, right? And then your epigenetics is the one that loads the gun. Do you think it kind of applies? Do you think that's fair to say? Tough questions.
So have you ever heard or has anybody talk to you about something like RNA splicing? Does that sound familiar?
Yeah, but I'm not an expert, so let us know.
So, so you have a set of genes, right? That really genes are just chemical compounds that are linked together by hydrogen bonds. That's it. The same chemical compounds like the nucleotide adenine, you're going to find it in vitamin B2. You're going to find it in vitamin B3. You're going to find it in ATP. It just so happens that the body decided to use one of these compounds as a basis for the DNA. A gene is basically just a segment of DNA that's making a protein. But when the body decides to make the protein from the gene, it has to make first RNA. And from that, the RNA can undergo a ton of different processes that people really don't mention because it's complicated. One of the processes with RNA is called RNA splicing, where it literally, imagine the pen is the RNA, it'll cut itself into different segments. And that leftover segment can be, it could be a red color, a green color, a blue color. And it's the same piece of RNA with the same protein that it's encoding, but because of the RNA splicing type, it'll make isoforms. And for example, one example is troponin. The protein has different isoforms, 60 different kinds. And so you can have the same exact protein but with 60 different kinds of overall forms it takes. And each form can have a specific niche in the body in which it activates certain pathways, or it increases certain factors in the body, and that itself changes the whole genetics. Is the gun, and then epigenetics is the environment plays a role into it, because right away that happens by itself. No epigenetics is involved. There's no regulatory factor involved. It's usually just as in need basis. What the body needs, it'll produce.
So like when somebody does though the basic 23andMe spit test thing, right, and sends it in, and then you get all these little codes and numbers for genetics and stuff. What is that they're testing for? What is that exact thing?
So I never really even paid attention to the 23andMe because I knew that some of it just isn't true. Like they'll put a gene on there, and if you have that gene, if you're heterozygous, homozygous, they'll say that you have a higher chance of condition X happening. But
this is them like from seeing studies with people that have this gene, and it's just that same vegan vegetarian versus meat eater thing, right? Like I'm saying, they're just like, oh, this one is associated with people that do this. Is that kind of what's happening there? Okay.
And the way that they associate it is usually with genetic defects. So you're never able to really tell what a gene is doing. You just have this instance of the defect saying, well, if the person doesn't have this gene, they lose an arm quicker, or they don't grow muscles anymore. And then you do it on a mice study, and it shows a completely different outcome in the mice. And so you're like, well, this gene codes for both protein atrophy, and then it also codes for brain atrophy. You're like, how is that possible? How can a gene have two specific functions, but it still be one gene? As it turns out, that's very much possible, thanks to the way that after genes are expressed, the RNA gets messed around with. And so you can have an association on 23andMe of whatever gene coding for higher risk of breast cancer, and then you still don't get breast cancer, and instead you get something totally different, like Alzheimer's disease. And the reason why is because the same gene can code for different effects in the human body.
Because it became, and I've done that, by the way, because I like to do everything. To tell you the truth, man, it didn't tell me dick. You know, I had these two. One gene said I have the genetics of I have good genes for muscle hypertrophy, which, like I said, I don't need you to tell me. Like, I fucking know I actually don't. for certain body parts, you know what I mean? Like, I guess, like I know, like I'm not a bodybuilder physique. And then it told me, like, you know, I have but at the same time it told me that I had genes for associated with endurance athletes. So it's like, oh, so you were saying I have a little bit of each. Oh, and it probably means I'm a mix. Oh, and it probably means most people are that way anyway, right? Like,
Exactly.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it fits into the majority of the population, and if you happen to be that, it's going to look good for you.
So you're not a fan of taking those ancestral and 23andMe's?
No.
Not at all, yeah?
No.
So how do you go about, you know, let's say you're working with a client and he wants to, you know, optimize his health. What do you do? Do you do blood tests? Do you do hair mineral analyses? Or not really? Or do you
I like to use the body as a blueprint. And I believe this is something that Ray discusses as well, because you can have things show up normal on a blood test. You can have things show up normal on a urine analysis test or whatever test that they decide to do when things clearly are not going right. And because of that, it's better to have the person describe what symptoms they may be facing or their history, which plays a huge role into why these symptoms present in the first place. And then that in turn can help you diagnose what the person might be facing or what kind of condition they might have been dealing with for years. And from there, you can plan out a protocol for them that really helps them. But it's never been a one size fits all approach. Like every single person I've ever worked with, and I stopped working with people recently because of the time constraints, but every person that I've worked with before always had something different, even though they've had manifestation of the same thing, like with mold, illness, and or whatever condition they might have had, like SIBO. There's always something different about each person in the way it manifests, even though it's the same condition. So the tests are useful to have an idea, but in no ways do they really tell me what to do with the person. It's always dependent on the person's history, what they've had success with, and then from there, you make a plan.
Are there basics that you kind of do? You know, whatever, your family member gets sick and you want you want to check what's going on. Are there basics that you run through?
The most important three things to me would be having adequate protein. Protein intake is one of the biggest to me. So many people do not eat enough protein in their day. Lowering stress levels as much as possible, and then trying to mitigate as much as you can when it comes to environmental toxins. Never will be 100%, but because they're so ubiquitous and you're always around something that's affecting your health, usually this plays a larger role than even food or anything else that they might have in mind.
Well, let's break each one of those down. So protein, are you kind of the fan? In the Ray Peat world, it's like what? Like basically around 100 grams, a little bit more above if you're a little bit more muscular or big, whatever. Is that fair, you think? Or
Yeah, I always say you don't want to be below 100 grams, no matter your weight, your size, whatever it may be, unless you're like 4'5", which is extremely unlikely, but you need protein. And it's better to see it from a cellular perspective. It's not just about protein to build muscle or whatever. It's because every single process in your cell is out of or depends on protein. Enzymes are protein. Ribosomes make proteins. Codons code for proteins. The DNA can activate thanks to proteins. It's all protein dependent. You need those amino acids. That's number one. Ideally, if you're an athlete, I would guess that the best idea would be 1 gram to 1.2 grams per pound of body weight. So that's the high end to me. I don't want to go above that. I don't think there's any benefit. Usually it just converts to glucose.
Right.
The stress, it can be usually work stress, family stress, life stress. The main thing is if you could take a break and you're able to have a vacation, do that, because immediately people are going to see results. I mean, obviously, every time somebody goes on a vacation to whatever, Bahamas or wherever they decide to go, they always feel better. And that's like a golden ticket to saying, look, this is what's wrong with you. You're dealing with way too much stress. Why don't you just take a break from things if you can? But most people aren't able to, so you work with other things.
Gotta work, Pedro. Yeah, man. Yeah, that's the out
difficult.
of those three, it's like people will change their diet. They'll probably add some supplements. Well, supplements is like, right, that's like became the end all be all. It's just throw fucking whatever magnesium at it, just shove it in there, right? And but doing the stress thing of like, hey, and it's also very subjective, and it's also, I think people aren't aware of what stress is to them. Do you know what I mean? Like they fucking hate their job, and they're not really happily married, or they hate their girl, or they fucking in a horrible toxic relationship, and they just keep plugging it along, right? And it's because it's hard. I understand it's hard to like end things or move on, but yeah, people have to be aware of that shit. I think people
micro stressors.
Micro stresses. Yeah, well, they become macro stressors, right?
Over time.
Yeah. And then what's that last one that you had? Oh, environmental toxins.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is a big one. It's not being considered as much with, obviously you've heard of endocrine disruptors, and there's only to an extent that you can absorb so many endocrine disruptors before you won't see any greater effect. Basically, whatever they're disrupting will take on zero order kinetics, meaning that it's already saturated. You can't get any greater effect from this outside of just like damage to the tissue itself. So that's obviously a big factor. If you're drinking out of plastic bottles that leach all of these bisphenol related compounds, not just BPA, BPS, there's thousands of them.
Yeah, they just rename them. I don't know if people are aware.
Yeah, exactly.
Of that. Yeah, it's really important because, and I'm a big fan of Anthony Jay's book. Have you read that? It's called Estrogeneration. Great book if people haven't read it.
I have not, but
but it's just like he just breaks it all down, like how much plastic is in fucking everywhere. It's not only your plastic bottle. I mean, I do feel like a lot of people kind of sit on a high horse when they talk about, I don't drink out of plastic bottles, only out of glass, but they sleep on polyester sheets. They wear fucking clothes that's made out of polyester. Their carpet is made out of plastic. Their car is made out of plastic. It's fucking everywhere. And I'm not perfect either. I'm all around that shit too. I'm just saying. So, but I just mean like it's way beyond plastic bottles, I think. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Even the house, like the tiles that they have in this apartment that I'm in, they coat it with something to prevent any damage to it. That's off-gassing chemicals. You don't notice it until you step out of your house for a couple of hours, and then you come back in, and there's this residual scent in your house. It's like, oh, now I smell it. It's everywhere. Yeah. You can't get away from environmental toxins. The thing is, you mitigate it. One of the ways you mitigate it is obviously leaving your door open, letting fresh air come in, utilizing binders because they will covalently bond to these molecules, get stuck, and they'll be carried out of your body. But even then, you'll never be 100% better. So it's doing it as much as you can and being as proactive as you possibly can.
And what do you mean by binders? What sort of things?
So the main one that is most often utilized and most well known is activated charcoal. And activated charcoal will literally pull anything. It'll pull metals out of your body. It'll pull phthalates out of your body. It'll pull mycotoxins, whatever is getting into the enteric system when it's being pushed out by the liver. It'll pull and hold on to that so strongly that it won't recirculate. But there's other ones, fulvic humic acid, different minerals act as antagonists to these compounds, different phytochemicals, which I'm sure you've heard of, like with phytates. That's why they bind the metals and then they excrete out of your body. In some amounts, it could be helpful, but you don't want too much. So there's many different binders. Whatever covalently bonds to the toxin itself and gets it out of your body without recirculating is a binder.
Well, you know, activated charcoal has been sort of ruined for me and a lot of people by David Asprey, or as I like to call him, David Asshole. How much experience have you had with that? Do you take that on a regular basis?
No. This is just to state, like, this is the most common one, the most well-known one. I don't think you want to be taking activated charcoal unless you had some major problem.
That's what I've heard. Yeah.
Because it takes away from your mineral stores. It makes your gut all messed up. It destroys the microbiome in some sense. So you get some results that, yeah, you got the thing you're trying to get rid of, but look at these other effects. You become copper deficient, anemic. You've become low in zinc. You are now having issues digesting proteins or dairy. And one of the reasons why is just overuse of charcoal.
So sort of.
I don't know what Dave Asprey says though. What does he talk about?
I don't know now, but I mean, he just had, you know, he was like one of the first ones to make it a mainstream supplement. I think that a lot of people were taking it. Yeah, but so sort of we should think about it as something that clears out stuff, but clears out everything, not just the bad stuff.
Exactly.
Right? Is that the way to think about it? Okay. And then you were saying like minerals and stuff like that. So what do you mean, like minerals you drop in your water? Or?
Yeah. So the electrolytes will prevent the absorption of other metals. Like if you had lead poisoning from drinking water, if you had, for example, magnesium, potassium, sodium, whatever is there, it'll actually prevent antagonistically the uptake of lead. And if you had fish that had mercury and you consume plants that had polyphenols, it'll chelate the mercury out so that only about less than 1% actually gets absorbed by the system. There's different ways. So even fiber can act as a chelation agent. It's just, what is the person's preference? What do they do well with? Because obviously some people do not like fiber, don't want to use activated charcoal, then find another alternative. That's it.
So is there anything supplement-wise that you take regularly, you know, or maybe day to day, or at least commonly during the week?
Commonly, definitely niacinamide. Niacinamide is amazing for me. I have ADD, and when I take niacinamide, it goes away. Yeah.
Really?
It's common, man.
I have some niacinamide sitting here, but I've never I never noticed that effect. I guess how much do you take?
500 milligrams.
And just a day with some food.
Just a day. Yeah, with some carbs, and immediately I'm just zoned in. I don't get distracted or anything.
It's also a popular one amongst the Ray Peaters, right? It's becoming, I think it's coming up. And what other stuff does it help with too, like niacinamide? So
niacinamide in general is just going to help your body oxidize the substrates better, and in turn, every other process is helped out. And so I think it's more what it does for the mitochondria that shows up as some of the effects of niacinamide. So better focus, memory, recall, in general, reduction of inflammation, improvement of substrate utilization. So it's just a overall Swiss Army knife in a sense.
Okay.
That's it.
Okay. Now, I wanted to bring up a really heated debate, a debated supplement, vitamin D. Because
I had a feeling.
You do that, huh? Yeah. Well, dude, you have a great Instagram. I think it's saved, one of those safe story ones.
Highlights. Yep.
Highlights. Sorry. Yeah, I'm so sorry, Instagram. Pretty sponsored. About it, because it's been going back and forth, at least in my circle of people that I know and chat with. Yeah. People like Matt Blackburn and Kate Deering and Danny Roddy, and they had this debate talking about it where debating about vitamin D, and I felt like it fucking went nowhere. And most people are still on the same kind of, if they're on the bandwagon of taking it, and if they're not, they're not. So, what are your thoughts on vitamin D? You broke it down quite nicely, I thought, in your little highlight. Could you just, break that down for us again?
Sure. So, Vitamin D, so I know Matt calls it the steroid D, so I could call it that, whatever works, but I'll explain each process one by one. UV light is damaging if in excess. Your body has the 7-dehydrocholesterol. UV light hits it, it causes what's called a pericyclic ring opening reaction. Basically, the cholesterol ring will open. Once it opens up like this, that's what you call steroid. Steroid is able to interconvert from itself into cholesterol. And so there's this reaction in which if you have too much vitamin D, it'll actually convert back to cholesterol, and so you'll never have a toxicity issue. And it'll protect from excess UV damage. But if the steroid gets converted further, it becomes the vitamin D3. That is the one that most people supplement. Then it goes into the liver, it gets hydroxylated at the 25th carbon. So you have carbon 1 to 3 all the way to carbon 25, and then you add a OH group, oxygen, hydrogen. That's called hydroxylating. And once that happens, you have 25 hydroxy vitamin D. That is the one that I believe Matt calls the storage form. And it's true. It's stored in your body. It's not really an active form. Once it gets brought to the kidneys, it gets hydroxylated again at the first carbon. And so you have 1-25 dihydroxy vitamin D. That is the active form. That's the one that produces antimicrobial peptides, calcitriol, calcitonin, all of those different vitamin D-related proteins.
And just to pause you right there, the active versus the storage form. When they're testing, when you go to a doctor and they test your vitamin D, what are they testing for? Which one?
Usually it's the 25 hydroxy, and if somebody is sick and they have parathyroid hormone or any kind of excess calcium, they'll usually test 125, but it's not often. They mostly test is the 25 hydroxy storage form,
not active form, not the active form. And the active form means what? Like it's in your. Explain what that means.
Basically, the 125 is what gets brought around to the cells, so that once it binds to the receptor, it triggers genomic changes, tells your genes to activate unique peptides for killing microbes, for increasing calcium inside of the circulatory system, for liberating calcium from the bones and from your teeth, and so you get demineralization. That's what 125 is doing. The 25 hydroxy gets stored in adipose tissue, fat cells, or in immune cells, so that when they face a microbe, it activates, and then you get an antimicrobial peptide.
Can you test for the active form? Is that what you were saying? You can, but your doctor won't usually do it. He'll test for the storage form. So then if you really want to get into the weeds with vitamin D, if you're really curious about it, probably, because you could, here in California, you can do what do they call it? Direct labs. You can just go and get a test yourself. You can just you don't have to ask your doctor's permission or whatever. You can test for both, you're saying, probably, right? And
yes,
that would be
can.
A better way of looking at your levels. Do you think people should be doing that, or not even that?
Nope, unless they were sick. Unless they had high calcium in their blood, unless they had high phosphate, then you would want to check 125. And you want to check 25, because sometimes if you have over 150 nanograms, usually that's telling you that you have way too much active as well. That's really it. There's a sweet spot when it comes to vitamin D, just like the Goldilocks zone for any mineral, vitamin, nutrient. There's a certain amount you want. 70 nanograms seems to be the best amount for storage form. And then you want the 125 to be low, because high amounts will start bringing calcium into the body, calcify different tissues. That's going to be difficult to take care of. So
and that range is usually from 25, I think now, right? Is that where it starts to like to 45 or I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what the end range is, but I do know that your doctor will tell you you're fine if you're around 25 or a little above there, right? Yeah. And the optimizing people will tell you that you want to be around 50, or then there's some psychos out there like it's that guy that was on Rogan's podcast, the traumatic brain injury doctor. I can't remember his name. I'm sure people will know it, but he recommends you being above 75, and he supplements like 10,000 IUs a day. He does like an insane. I wouldn't do that. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't sound good to me either. But then he also talks about how he takes calcium also, blah blah blah. All that stuff.
Andrew Huberman?
No, it's an. I'll look it up in a second here. Yeah. He did He was here for a while. He was working with guys who have CTE. Fucking God.
Robert Sapolsky?
No. Although that guy, we can talk about that guy. That guy is an interesting guy. Dr.
really
Mark
is.
Gordon. Dr. Mark Gordon. Dr.
Oh, I
Mark
have no
Gordon.
idea who that is.
Yeah. You could. Well, I'd be curious. You should check it out, and then maybe you can make a post about it or something, or let us know, and we'll share about it too. I'd be curious your thoughts on it. Yeah, Dr. Mark Gordon, and he does a shitload of vitamin D, and he's like the one. Yeah. So are you kind of on the side of don't supplement it then, or what?
I think that it depends on the race because somebody that's dark skinned, it's actually natural for them to have lower levels of 25-hydroxy, the storage form, because they have higher amount of melanin. And so they already have a protection mechanism from UV light that lighter skinned individuals like you and I don't have. We will have higher amounts of 25-hydroxy. They won't. And so it's really dependent on race, in my opinion. But one way that you can really tell is if you have demineralization of your teeth, do you need vitamin D? Because that could be a surefire way. If you're having too much cavities, maybe you need vitamin D and obviously vitamin K2 to bring it up to the proper tissue. If you have, if you broke a bone, or if you decided you were going to skateboard one day and all of a sudden you fell and you just really felt like it destroyed your shin or you hurt your elbow and you're not healing properly, likely you don't have enough calcium. You need vitamin D. So it's always an as need basis. And I don't like that they measure serum because vitamin D is a fat soluble vitamin. It gets stored in the fat tissues and the membranes itself. So whatever is present in the blood is probably not a true representation of what's going on inside of cells.
Okay, so that's a big point, I think, man. So you're saying even that going to your doctor and measuring both the storage and the inactive form too, probably even that is not a super accurate representation.
Exactly.
You're saying the only true way to do it is to pull out some adipose tissue, which you can't do at your local doctor or whatever. Okay, so then could you talk about that relationship between vitamin D and calcium that you just brought up?
Yeah. So vitamin D tells your body absorb more calcium and or utilize more calcium by pulling it out of bones and your teeth. And so you have high calcium in the blood. Too much calcium in the blood will tend to put it into tissues where it's not supposed to be, like the heart. And then you have arterial calcification. That's pretty much it, which is why you need vitamin K2, because with that, produces the protein that tells it to go to the proper tissue.
So then is there a relationship between people who have a lot of calcification in their arteries, you're saying, and having low or
high vitamin D?
High vitamin D. Yeah, you think so? Yeah,
there definitely is. I know, man, it's been a long time, but there was a study that looked at vitamin D and saw worse outcomes because of the calcification. You're basically telling calcium to come, but you're not telling it where to go. It's like as if you had you're somebody in front of the restaurant that's telling people, okay, we're going to get a seat for you. And then you never tell them which seat they go to. And so the people that are coming to the restaurant decide to go everywhere. There's no order when it comes to seating. Vitamin K2 acts like the waitress that tells you exactly where you're supposed to sit in the restaurant.
So now let's bring it full circle, because in the Ray Peat world, it's really popular to consume a lot of calcium. He's a big fan of calcium, right? For everything. If you were to do that, does that increase the chances of that happening also, of calcification happening, or is that a complete different mechanism that's happening there when you're consuming it from diet?
It definitely does, but I know Ray is so adamant about K2, and as well as Danny, that I never see anybody having an issue with it. But if they didn't know better and they didn't consider K2, absolutely, it could.
So then I don't know what's his current recommendation, because, it changes things sometimes. But somewhere around 2 quarts of milk. How much calcium is that? Do you know? I can Google it here really quick.
I think it's past 1,000 to 2,000 milligrams of calcium.
Yeah. Do you think that's enough? Do you think that's too much?
I think that's within the range. Usually 700 to 1,000 milligrams is what usually somebody want. But what I believe the argument is that people get too much phosphate in their diet. And it's very true. Usually when you eat muscle meat and all of the other foods like legumes, or if you were to eat grains, breads, you're going to get a lot of phosphate. You need the calcium to circumvent the effects of phosphate. And so that's probably why Ray recommends it.
Okay. So yeah, like all things, you can't just pinpoint one thing, right, without looking at the whole picture. So
that's the problem.
Okay. So then, do you supplement vitamin D? Are you not a fan?
No.
You don't give a
at
fuck
all.
about it, right?
I used to, but No, especially in Florida, man, there's no need for me.
Right. Now, what if you were living in Vancouver around a bunch of
Maybe.
heroin addicts and
Maybe.
yeah? Oh, man. It's such a tough... So how would you go about it? Let's say you had some symptoms that you were feeling like shit. Would you...
I would probably get a UVB lamp instead.
Would a tanning bed do similar or not even close?
So that reaction I mentioned with the cholesterol converting to steroid, it only happens with UVB. So all you really need is UVB.
But a tanning bed does have that too, right?
I think it also has UVA and UVC, and the UVC is what can be really damaging.
Those are the inflammatory
highly
ones.
ionizing.
Yeah. Those will make you tan though, right?
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly.
So UVB light. Okay, so you're steering away from because Ray Peat still recommends vitamin D to most people. I think all the rubbing it on the skin, which of course, right, that you're gonna soak up way less than if you're supplementing it.
Yeah,
orally,
that's true.
Okay, interesting. And then you brought up the UVB lamp. How about red light therapy? Are you a fan of that stuff, or do you think it's overrated, or what are your honest thoughts?
So I never really got into red light until I started listening to Jack Kruse, and I'm sure you've heard of Jack Kruse, right?
Yeah.
Jack is like the complete opposite of Ray, but he has some very interesting perspectives, and he knows what he's talking about, because even to this day, having done some higher level courses in physics and related to how biology works with physics, he's absolutely right about a lot of things. For example, he talks about infrared light being the key to how life started on this planet. And in fact, most of the reactions in the prebiotic times that scientists believe have happened are thanks to UV light and infrared light. Without those two wavelengths of light, most of the reactions that gave rise to life probably would not have happened. We know that mitochondria respond pretty well to infrared light, and it has to do with the electron transport chain. Those complexes there will absorb some of the infrared light, different wavelengths as well, but mostly infrared, and it'll increase the shuttling of the electron through the transport chain. What you get is more ATP in return. So red light is really beneficial in multiple ways.
Yeah. That's the one big keynote they promote a lot, right? Is you just get more ATP. So
ATP.
That's true. That seems like it's a real thing.
Yeah, the mechanism is difficult to explain, especially because it requires higher level physics that I don't fully understand yet. But from what I can explain, the transport chain basically acts as a capacitor. It absorbs and holds electrical energy. And to an extent, any aberrations there can cause reactive species to form. But with infrared light, I guess because it's a longer wavelength, it's not as ionizing. Like UV light is faster wavelengths, whereas infrared's much longer. And so there's less energy leakage. It allows the body to transfer those electrons more effectively in the electron transport chain.
So with the red light, there's like a lot of brands out there. Juve being the most the most popular, but super fucking expensive. I don't know if you ever looked at their stuff. Right? It's like thousands of dollars. Yeah, it's like thousands of dollars. And it does look cool. I mean, it has the best looking look. There's other brands like Gambaret. Yeah, you think it's just a marketing tool, right? It just looks really good. And okay. So what about then just using, like a lot of people do, which I have a bunch of, but I don't know how. I'm not super hip on all the all the physics stuff because I'm not sure how much one of those chicken coop kind of lamp things, if it's strong enough to emit enough red light. You don't think so either, huh?
No, it depends on what it should give you the exact amount on the back of the bulb or on the back of the lamp itself. Usually it's like 220 watts.
Watts is 250. It's 250. So I know that.
250. So that's still pretty high compared to most of them. And then you would want to check the irradiance and how much energy is being put out in a span of 6 inches and then 12 inches, because that's really what matters. Is that energy traveling far enough into your tissue? Because if it's not, you're not going to get any effect. The sun has such a high radiance that you're always going to get an effect from the sun when it comes to red light, which is why I always tell people, just go out in the sun. Don't worry about the
easy solution.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you have every part of your body covered when it comes to the sun.
Easy solution. There we go. I love that, bro, that you brought that up, because I'm a big fan of stuff like that. Practical things. You know, I can tell you 1,000 little tiny things that you could do that you won't. And then it's like, what is the point even? Okay, that's a great thing. Because, so if you were living in a shithole place like Vancouver, no offense to my people in Vancouver, but it's a shithole. I've been there. I'm just kidding. But you would just get, instead of even a red light, you would just say, get a UVB light. Lamp, right, and get tan and go outside as much as you can still, because you're still getting some of that, right?
Exactly.
Right. Even if you're in the winter, it's not the same, of course, but that'd be the way to go about it. And there are brands that make a little cheaper red light therapy things, but I don't know. My messing around with them is like you said. I mean, you could feel it when you're really close if you're using one of those chicken heat things, but it, I don't know.
As far as you go, yeah.
Foot away, you don't feel shit. Yeah. So you think probably you're not getting strong enough, and you're just sitting there in front of a red light. It looks kind of cool. Maybe it's relaxing, but
you're getting some signaling to the brain because the light is hitting the eyes. You're able to see the red light, but when it comes to the mitochondria throughout your body, probably not.
Good, very fucking good point, man. So what else? What other things can you do? What else do you do? Because we got talking about this via environmental, stuff. What other things do you do? How about like mold toxicity and all that? Because that's really hip. And I've been there and done that, and I've done all sorts of tests. And honestly, man, every time I've done those home mold tests, it was just a fucking waste of time and a lot of money, because it always turns out that everything is fine and within range.
Here's why. And this is a big problem when it comes to mold testing. Nobody's going to mention this to you, but your home inside will not have mold spores, and so everything really is fine. But if you were to plug a hole in your sheetrock, and then that area, for example, if it had water damage and it grew mold, you're going to find a lot of mold there. The mold isn't the problem, really. It's the mycotoxins that can be volatile, and if they're volatile, they'll pass right through the wall. And because they're odorless, you can't see them. There's no color to them. And because you are inhaling them on a daily basis, if you're in a moldy environment, it's going to affect you regardless. That isn't going to show up on a blood test unless you have specific mycotoxins like mycophenolic acid and what's another one? Citrinin is another one. Those will show up. But there's so many different volatile compounds that molds produce. And the reason why they do that is because molds are always on an active war against bacteria. Those two are always trying to combat one another, which is why penicillin was the antibiotic that was derived from the penicillium species of mold, the fungus. So you can have normal air at home, but in reality, you have to puncture sheetrock and use an urban test there to actually see if you have normal air. So no way to tell us.
Fair to say it's kind of useless to do those?
Useless.
Yeah? Wow. You're the first person to say that, bro. I really appreciate having you on here. Because I've wasted, I don't know. So I mean, not
hundreds
like
of dollars.
Yeah, no, like $1,000 to $2,000.
Fuck.
Yeah. But I'm all about kind of trying it out and being, and just seeing what I get. And like I said, it was like, all right, this is just a bunch of fucking wasted time. It would show you some one very specific thing, and then it's like you find out about it. It's like, oh, you really can't really do anything about that. So. And,
even remediation, let's say you did have such a high level of mold in your house, you're going to spend more money remediating than if you were to just move out.
Yeah.
And that's really what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess it's like find the best thing you can move into, right? The best, cleanest space you can. But guess what? It's probably some mold there too, right?
Yeah. You ever seen how they build houses with wood and stuff? And then as the construction is being built over a period of a couple months to a year, there's always rainstorms that'll come by and watch. Oh, yeah. There's always mold growing in the new houses.
Yeah, and it's not like these construction workers are like checking, like, oh, okay, guys, we're having a high levels of mold. Let's, they're just building a fucking house. I know, you would have to change. I mean, it's sad that that's the way it is, but that's the way it is. You would have to change the entire system, I think, to fucking... So, do you do anything to filter air inside the house? Do you buy those?
I should.
Yeah.
I should. Honestly, filtering air in the house, because once again, the place that I'm in, they have this wax over the tiles and the floor, and they off gas. You could smell it after a couple of hours you leave the house. So I leave the door open as much as I can, and that's usually the best air filter. Just leave your freaking windows open the door. Awesome. Don't go buying a $2,000 filter. But if you were to have one, yeah, it'll help out. But nothing that I would focus the most of my time on. Air filters would be something last that I would consider.
Because there's some also I was that close to buying like one of those like $500 ones, but then I was like, I don't fucking know.
Yeah.
Because also another thing is like how often I gotta change the filter and how much I gotta spend on the filter, and how do I know that that filter is dirty or not dirty? What kind of shit is that filter blowing out into my air? You know what I mean? And I don't know. That's a whole world that I also haven't. I've been, kind of like, careful. Like, I don't want to fucking go too deep into it, and then
because you become basically like the typical mom that's just worried about every single thing that's impacting a home. Yeah, it's difficult, man.
Go outside. So and then also in that world, another thing is like negative ionizers, right? What do they call them? Air ionizers now, or what do they call them?
Yeah, where they produce negative ions.
Yeah. Sort of. There's really small, cheap ones which I haven't fucked around with on like Amazon. You just like plug it in. But again, I don't know how much do you know about that world. Nothing.
No, no. I know quite a bit about the whole ion stuff, but it's to me not worth it because guess where you're getting negative ions from? The tree right outside your home. It's free right there, man.
Okay, so just go outside, huh?
That's
Good tip. Oh man, I don't know if you saw my Instagram I posted the other day. I was just walking by on this major street here, and I saw these two dudes in the gym, facing fucking wall, walking on the treadmill, not running.
Oh,
even.
I see that.
Walking,
with their masks on.
Masks fully fucking, like they're like glued
covered
to their face,
fully, yeah.
Bluetooth and another screen in front, just walking, not even running. I was waiting, believe me. I was standing there for about 10 minutes. I was like, come on, they gotta start running or something, and they did. They just walked. That's where we're at.
That reminds me of that Instagram page, Dystopia Aesthetics.
Oh yeah.
This is pretty much it, man.
Dude, that's where we are at. Okay, so and by the way, the whole grounding scene is sort of based a lot on that negative ion stuff, right? Because you're touching the floor and you're releasing a lot of those things, or you're getting a lot of those things.
Yes. So how can I explain this? But so you do have a buildup of it's not even a gradient. You have some charges that your body has to release, and if you just ground yourself, it'll release them. And the reason why the earth is a perfect grounding agent is because it basically absorbs those charges, and in return you get electrons from it. But the idea of electrons are not electron particles themselves. It may be some kind of carbon atom or oxygen atom that has the charge, but then it quickly dissipates. There's really no benefit other than the discharge from your own body. And it's not like it can make such a difference for people that it'll change or revolutionize their life. Some people have claimed that just by waking up in the middle of the night when they can't sleep and going outside after discharging, they feel better and they can go to sleep. Some people are just sensitive like that to electropollution, but I don't think it's as big a concern really as most people make it out to be.
Love it, bro.
It depends on the individual.
Love it. So then buying $200 grounding mats
no, man, don't.
For their bed. Love it, brother. I was so happy to have you on. I don't know. It's just like, fuck. And by the way, it's another thing that you got to plug in, right? It's usually that, or it's like this other...
You're already creating... Yeah, you're
That's what I'm
creating
saying.
electropollution as you plug in.
I don't know, man. We've definitely hit a wall with all the biohacking shit, right? Where I feel like I can't take it anymore, man. I'm just like, oh my god. And I mean, like, I don't even know how full retard we can go on this. It's just like, it just keeps going and going and going, and I'm like, stop it. Oh my god, man. Okay.
The best one was your video of Rhonda Patrick. Man, I watched that at least 20 times. Dr. Patrick here.
Hello, guys. How she opens her mouth.
The cadence when you did it was exactly on point. And then the head twist. Oh,
Thank
man,
you, sir.
too good.
Thank you. Yeah, it was fun. Well, I don't know if people caught on, but like, because she does her little reels and she like changes every bit.
Yeah.
So I just kind of went all over my house and I ended up like in the toilet. I was just like, this is
behind the leaf that you
yeah.
the
Like
little tree that you have.
Yeah, I walked out of a closet on one of them. So I don't know, because I just thought it was funny. I was like, why does she just fucking just stay in the same place and just pause it? I don't know. Oh man. All right. So going outside, doing good stuff. And then, well, you brought up EMF, stuff like that. How about that? Like, basic stuff like turning off your Wi-Fi signal or whatnot.
Yeah, that definitely you don't want to be sleeping next to a router. You definitely don't want to be sleeping next to your electric box and the smart meters in the house if you have some. You want to turn off Wi-Fi. Definitely those things play a role. And to the extent that they play a role might be minor because the electromagnetic waves that are produced are always interacting with different things, even if they're not magnetizable. Like the wood table that I have in front of me is to an extent protecting me from the frequency of the phone, the laptop I have in front of me. And because people are always going to be on digital devices nowadays, there's no escaping it. The best thing you could do is just mitigate it at night and just be outside, because the light from the sun that most people forget is an electromagnetic frequency that interacts with other, canceling them out.
Yeah. So it's not a huge concern to you, huh? You're not one of those 5G tower kind of people, or are you?
I definitely think that 5G is detrimental if you're outside. If you're inside, because it's such it's a sharp frequency, it'll just penetrate maybe the wall and that's it. It can never get to you once you're inside, unless you have a 5G box inside. Then you're fucked. But outside, you're usually going to have a couple of towers in the span of 1,000 feet. It will create basically a microwave box. You're basically getting microwaved. There's no way around it. It's the same frequency range. What about your phone?
Because all the new iPhones they're like all 5G.
5G. Yeah.
So you probably don't.
Same thing.
Same thing.
Yeah. So if you're this close, you're getting some of that. The best thing you could do, once again, is just be outside. Those little things that they put on the phone, where they call it a Faraday box. It's not acting like a Faraday cage or box. You need a real cage to actually prevent most of this from happening. There's no getting around it.
You never tried one of those? I've had one given to me. I think it was Slint, the company. I mean, you put the phone inside and no signal. You never fucked around with one of those? But I mean, again, it's not practical. I think I know what you mean, though. Like it's literally that meshy kind of fabric thing, whatever they call Faraday.
Right.
You put the phone inside. If you close it, the signal won't go through. You can't call the phone. But it's not very practical because.
Oh, okay, no.
Yeah. Because
That's not the one. The one I'm thinking about is the sticker that you put on the phone.
Oh no. Yeah. Oh yeah, dude, that ain't doing shit. Well, I mean, hey, I've been there, done that though. I bought those things back in the day too when they just started coming out. I mean, this was like iPhone 2 or probably something like that. You know what I mean? This is a long time ago. But yeah, or like those like crystal chains that are like, oh, this protects me from EMF. I'm like, I mean, it looks cool. I don't know. I mean, whatever. But like, I don't think it works that way, does it?
But the mesh one sounds like it could work, but then it's like, what's the point if you're going to use your phone?
That's what I was saying. Let me Google really quick. I think the name of the thing is Slint, Faraday.
I'll write it down.
Yeah, Slint phone case or Sling. That's right, Sling. Yeah, it's like I said, it's a real thing. You put it inside and it's dead. You can't call it, but it's not practical because. What if somebody wants to text you or call you? Like, I don't know what the fuck you're going to do.
Exactly.
And then the thing is, like, if you don't mind having your phone turned off, just don't take your phone or, like, don't use your phone. Yeah.
That's the difference. It's like there's already a solution for you. It's just put it on airplane mode and keep it in a room away instead of buying, I don't know how expensive that might be.
See, even that has been debated, though, because I don't know if you know, like, these new phones, like, if you turn them off, you're still able to use Find My Phone. You know that? There's this new.
Oh, that's a good point. I didn't consider that.
It's this new feature that they added. Yeah, new amazing feature, right? If it's like you turn off your phone, you can still use Find My Phone in case you lose it. Blah blah blah. So it's like, okay, so it's still emitting a bit of a signal, or what the fuck? How does that fucking work? How is the phone off, but still you can use Find My Phone? I have no clue.
They probably have some program or software that turns the phone off, but it doesn't turn off that specific bit of Find My Phone. And so that's definitely emitting a signal, because otherwise they wouldn't be able to find the location of the phone.
So just
in
basically,
that case, though.
yeah, the only way to do it is you're saying just stay away from it a bit. Yeah. And, but you're not super concerned about it. You're not like, you ever see, Werner Herzog, you know who that is? The director. He does these like cool documentaries, older guy. Well, it's this kind of a famous documentarian. He did this documentary where it was all about technology, and he went to this small island in Hawaii, and it's full of people who have moved to this small, tiny island of Hawaii because there's no cell towers there at all. Nothing. It's just a small area that because apparently these people were like living in this cities or whatever, and they were like dying because they were so sensitive to EMF. And then they moved there, and it goes away. It goes away. Now I don't know if it's all bullshit, or it's in their head, but it was quite interesting, and it was obviously the people were a little weird, living in a tiny little place in Hawaii.
The sensitive people, there definitely is a certain amount of people in the population that have, for some reason, a sensitivity to currents, and then the current changes. And what usually happens is that voltage gated channels activate, and they get basically excitotoxicity in their brain and their nervous system. It feels like they're on fire, basically, or they have fibromyalgia. Mm-hmm. It can happen. And the same thing happens with 1/4 of the population in regards to mold. They have a human leukocyte antigen mutation, which is a gene in which basically they have hyperimmune responses to the mold. And so they have really high sensitivity. So those people exist, and I'm sure something in relation to like a genetic difference between the people that don't experience pollution, symptoms from electropollution, and then the people that do experience symptoms from electropollution exists. But what it is, I'm not sure. I haven't looked too deep into it. So it's very much possible, but I don't think if we live already in a city area and we're exposed to a bunch of different devices that emit electromagnetic frequencies and we haven't gotten sick yet, we're probably not that people.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, especially like me living in LA. Although, I don't know. I mean, I do know if I stare at a screen for I can't believe people work and stare at a screen all fucking day long. I mean, I'm so blessed. Seriously, I'm thankful and grateful for it every day that I don't have to do that, because that sounds like a rough life. But you got to do what you got to do sometimes. I understand. But yeah, that's probably, I do feel crappy when I do that. But that also could be that I'm just kind of not used to it. Like I don't have any, I've never really done that my whole life. So I don't know, man. It's an interesting topic nonetheless. So as far as science goes and all stuff that you're doing, what are you doing currently? What are you into now?
Yeah, so right now I'm finishing my bachelor's in biomedical science, biotechnology. It's basically both together. You get to do a bit of both. And I got really interested in the chemistry and the physics side of things. So what I'm probably going to do, there's some master's programs that I wanted to get into, but to do a really good master's program in like chemistry or biochemistry, you would need a couple of courses that I haven't taken yet. And if I just wanted to get a master's in biochemistry that wasn't really applicable to the things that I want to do, I could, but I'm probably going to do a second bachelor's in both pure chemistry and math. And it'll probably take me 2 years, which will then allow me to do the things that I really want to do, which is the biophysical, biochemical stuff that I find really interesting, that Ray Peat talks about a lot, but to really understand what's going on. For example, with Gilbert Ling, the reason nobody understands what the hell Gilbert Ling's talking about
is
because it's purely physical chemistry.
Yeah.
And that is one of the hardest courses to take in chemistry. There's a lot of thermodynamics involved. What he's ultimately stating is that if the sodium-potassium pump existed, it would violate the laws of thermodynamics by 5 times the amount of energy required. That's basically his general idea. But to really understand these things, you need some high-level chemistry and physics courses. That's what I'm probably going to do next in the coming couple of months.
Shit, man. So you're going to get into some fucking deep waters there.
Yeah.
So and you want to just continue doing research for now. That's what you're into.
Definitely.
Very cool. I don't know, Gilbert Ling. So whatever happened to the documentary? Did they kind of release the thing?
I don't know. I found out about these guys way after they existed.
Oh yeah, there was a lot. I want to see some comments from people below. I'm curious, like what they'll say, because I've heard there's been a lot of money donated to that documentary. So I wonder what happened there. I have no idea. Maybe somebody will put one out again. I don't know. Although
At least they released a Ray Peat one, but I'm interested to see. I forgot
yeah,
the guy's
with a
name.
piece of cheese of fucking hanging above his lip that they couldn't tell him about. Did you see that
Oh,
clip?
no, I didn't.
Yeah, I commented that too. it's like, come on, like it was like a little piece of cheese or something hanging off of the lip, and I'm like, oh,
Dang.
for 2 hours, like.
Way to paint the master in the wrong light.
Yeah, well, you know, I mean, you know, he's Ray Peat. He's an interesting fella. Either way. Well, awesome, bro. Yeah. What are you saying?
I was gonna mention about Ray. Like most people don't know, but the stuff that he still explains goes above my head at times. Goes above many people's head at times. Ray's depth of knowledge is far, far greater than most people realize. I'm sure the coming years will still have things about Ray that we'll revisit and we'll see, oh, he mentioned this way, way ago, but we still don't understand why or what this meant. Now we do. Like he's going to be somebody that residually comes back up in the coming decade, I think.
I agree. And whether people agree or not, at least you got to give him credit for talking about shit like, you know, like eating carbohydrates and not eating PUFA way ahead of his time.
Yeah.
Whereas now you have those like, you know, super popular Instagram accounts that are just like straight up pulling shit from him, and they're just posting about it and getting, you know, thousands of likes and blah blah blah. But you get something like, oh, I've read that somewhere. Oh, Ray Peat said that exact same thing, and then they're citing the same references.
They never get
which
credit.
Is fine. Yeah, you just gotta. I just feel like you gotta give credit because, you know, in a year or two when they find some other guru, they'll just quote it.
They'll just flip on that.
They'll just flip and they'll just fucking doing that. So you got to think for yourself. But I appreciate you being so honest and practical about certain things, even though you're a super knowledgeable fucking guy and you know your shit.
Appreciate it, man.
So thanks for coming onto the show, and I hope we can do it again. And maybe we can get Kyle on here, and I think we guys would have a great chat on here. So maybe we'll do it again in the coming weeks or months or whatever. All right, brother?
Sounds good. Thank you.